We are recording. We are live. Hello and welcome to the A Better Life Together Inc. Wednesday webinar series, Getting Past the No. This is brought to you by the B.R.I.D.G.E Project with A Better Life Together B.R.I.D.G.E Project team. My name is Melissa Ramsey. I am the project and media coordinator at A Better Life Together. I am joined today by Carmela Marybow. She works on outreach as well as the B.R.I.D.G.E Project. I am also joined by our project manager, Elizabeth Jackson. And really quick, I want to share a few housekeeping rules for the webinar. If you will mute your microphone, hold your questions and our comments till the Q&A portion at the end. If you want to share your question or your comment in the chat, our chat captain, Carmela, is going to share those with Crystal first during the Q&A portion. And finally, if you're unable to stay with us until the end of the webinar, we are recording and the replay will be available on the resources page of our website of abetterlifetogether.org/resources. It's also going to be on our YouTube page, which you can navigate to through our resources page to watch past webinars as well. But we are so very excited to have with us today Crystal Sanford. She is with Sanford Autism Consulting. Being a mom that's navigating the process of finding supports for my child here in San Diego, because we're new to San Diego. This was one of the pages that I found in my search, prior to moving here. And so I am so excited, again, that this is an opportunity for me to ask questions, and for a lot of our parents and families will be sending questions. They've relayed questions to us as we've been on the Disparity Call Project. So we'll be sharing those with Crystal. And as always, the purpose of our series is to provide tips for parents and individuals with disabilities. And Crystal is going to be sharing the ways in which Sanford Autism Consulting has been able to make an impact in San Diego County and beyond, and how they've been supporting families. So without further ado, I don't want to be too long-winded. Can we do a COVID clap? Just this hand and this hand. Let's just clap. Welcome, Crystal. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be able to help and share with families.
Welcome, welcome.
I am just very happy to be here, and, I can share a little bit about my story if that's what you'd like me to do first. So I'm Crystal Sanford of Sanford Autism Consulting. So I am your autism and IEP advocate here, based in San Diego, California, but we do support families throughout the US. And so a little about my backstory and where the business started. I am a mom of a child on the autism spectrum. She's now 10 years old. She was originally identified based on my persistence at age 3.5. And because she is a child who is a speaking child on the spectrum, and she has language skills and all those good things, it was challenging to see her receive the diagnosis and be able to move forward with early intervention services. And so because of my background, I've been a speech pathologist for over 20 years in multiple school districts in California. Because of that background, I was able to really not give up on the idea that potentially this child could be on the autism spectrum, and at least to get that diagnosis. So at age 3.5, she was identified with autism. She was identified through the school district, because that was my first place to go. I'd been a school district employee for so long. I went there first. She received the identification and began to receive services. Without a medical diagnosis, we didn't move forward with that until she was at age 5. We felt we didn't need to. She was getting services, and she was beginning to make progress in that area. And so with so many challenges that came into my life during that time, this is way back in 2014, I began to realize that navigating the system as a parent was a challenge. And I had seen parents in IEP meetings, crying or not understanding, signing the IEP year after year and not really realizing, what they were signing for, not really aware of their rights. But as a district employee, you can only do so much. And so once my daughter was identified, once I began to go through the process myself, I realized that there was a real need for supports for families impacted by autism and really all special needs families. So in November of 2016 is when I opened my practice, Sanford Autism Consulting. And initially, it was just to be a place of resource for autism families. But in the past 4.5 years, it's really developed into a place of advocacy and empowerment for fellow special needs families with a special focus on the autism population. And so I offer IEP advocacy for parents who need someone to read their IEP, help them understand it. I'm a really big proponent of parent education because you as the parent will be with your child for the rest of their life. And so my goal is not to be the person that steps in and saves the day per se, but my goal is, if I've done my job right, is to have empowered you as the parent to understand your IEP, your child's IEP, to know their rights, and for you to be able to be a strong advocate for them for the rest of their IEPs going forward. And so I say that my goal is to work myself out of a job, but that really is my goal because I really want parents to know what they don't know, to understand how to best support their child through the special education process. So I work as an advocate. I help parents. I attend meetings with families. Then I also offer parent education classes through the San Diego Regional Center. So for regional center families out there across California, you actually have the opportunity to attend a conference annually that regional center will pay for. Sometimes your service coordinators um, uh, don't share that information for whatever reason. And so just so that you know, every year you can attend a conference that will give you some education about how to better support your child. And one of those conferences is what I offer, the Crystal Clear IEP conference. So that's 4 hours of nonstop IEPs for parents in a language that you understand. And I want to say almost every parent leaves there really feeling as though they have some tools for their toolbox to move forward and help their child. So that's something that I do once a month on Saturdays. And then I also offer free classes quarterly, as well as a weekly live show and podcast, Thriving Special Families. So I am, wherever families are, trying to help and support families as much as possible along their special education and autism journey. And so my next thought that I wanted to share really was in the idea of our families who are not able to access information. And so, if you're a parent out there who has a child, definitely families of color, families who maybe have limited access to resources and such things, I really want to encourage you to reach out and to what I tell parents all the time is trust your gut and ask questions. Those are two important things. And so you may have a child who maybe is early in the process. Maybe you're considering, does my child have autism, or you're just kind of starting that process. And I really encourage you to ask questions, reach out. There are so many resources that are available. If you have a child, be they preschool or early in elementary, and they have a diagnosis of autism, for example, there are resources. Applied behavior analysis, ABA services is one of them that can be accessible to you if you have a child who has some behavior challenges, be they large or small. Sometimes with our kiddos on the spectrum, they may have challenges that are not as overt. Some of our kids who are speaking, who have certain skill sets, some strong cognitive skills, may have anxiety. They may exhibit some behaviors that are more internalized. So we've got to tap into that too and provide support in that area too. So I would encourage you families to reach out to your regional center if you're in California. Definitely let your teams know because they are a point of contact for either initial assessment or also to provide services for you. funding and reimbursement for services as well, medical services, even IHSS, which is another resource for parents, maybe that you are aware of, or not in home support services for parents who need to be more hands-on and caregivers for our kiddos on the spectrum, who are maybe flight risk, maybe our kiddos who elope, children who have maybe more behaviors, or even our children who just need those reminders. They just can't make it through their day without reminders about eating, feeding, cleaning themselves, those things. There's a possible opportunity for you as a parent to receive some funding to support your child through the IHSS program. And so that's something that you can discuss with an advocate like myself. There's a few advocates that actually specialize in that area. You can also reach out to your regional center service coordinator who can point you in the right direction for that as well. But that is funding that can be provided to you as a parent to allow you to be available, and still work part-time and support your child who has needs. And so that's another resource that I always like to share about for families. Um, and then, we can go in more into the IEP process if that's something that parents need some answers about, especially now as we get closer to the time where schools are reopening. And here we are in Southern California, San Diego area, where it looks like finally schools are beginning to reopen. And so preparing our children for that, especially our kiddos on the spectrum, using social stories. My daughter is quite anxious about returning to campus. She could be on Zoom for the rest of her educational life and be very fine with that. And that's to be expected because our kiddos struggle socially. And so if you struggle socially, being able to be on Zoom, being away from large groups of people that you have to interact with on a daily basis is like a dream. And to have to go back into that can definitely cause some anxiety, like I talked about with our kiddos on the spectrum. They often experience anxiety to some degree. And so preparing them through, social stories, really important. Things that you can use that are, depending on where they are, either pictures or words or a combination of both, that explains the unseen, that explains the things that we take for granted and can interpret on our own because we have strong social skills. But if you're a child who doesn't have that, you may need to have that spelled out. And so preparing your child with a social story, school will be starting soon. I may feel nervous. This is what will happen. We will go back to school on these days. I will eat lunch at this time, and just spell out and give them that schedule. If I feel upset at school, I can talk to XYZ person, and really giving them the language, because a lot of our kids, again, on the spectrum, they are really good at memory and repeating. Especially our girls, they may not necessarily appear as obvious as in identification of autism because they can mimic well. They're really good imitators. So when it comes to something like a social story, give them language to imitate, give them words so that they can use in a time where they're feeling, some anxiety or such things when it comes to returning to school. So creating some social stories can help. A schedule, giving them a visual schedule of what they can expect when school starts, prepping them 2 weeks ahead of time, which is kind of like where we are right now. Maybe drive by the school just to get them used to, hey, this is the place you're going to start seeing again. Letting them help to prepare their lunch and buying those snacks and things ahead of time. All those things can be very helpful in setting the stage to help ease the transition. And if you're an autism parent, some of the stuff you're going to just kind of feel, it'll come natural because what happens when you change something suddenly for your kid on the spectrum. Like it can be full on meltdown, and I don't say tantrum because for our kiddos on the spectrum, it truly is, using the technical term, a meltdown. They just struggle with changes to routine. And so we know that can happen. And I don't care what age they are on the spectrum. I have worked with a young man, he's 19 now, he's in college, but he's on the spectrum. And he talked about being in high school and having meltdowns about a fire drill because he didn't know what was happening that day. And it just really just rocked his world. And so these things can happen. How do we prepare them? We prepare them with as much ahead of time information as we can. We also talk about tools that they can use and empower them with tools. Whenever you feel anxious or upset, you can. You know, my daughter can rattle off the list. I can drink water. I can hug my stuffed animal. I can talk to a grown up. I can take a walk. Empower them with that knowledge because as they get older, they're going to need those tools and be able to draw on them because we're not going to be as parents around to help manipulate their situation and their life and their schedule all the time. So we want to give them tools that they can use to help navigate when situations occur. So those are some things that can help in preparation for the transition back to school. And then when it comes to the IEP and us going back to school parents, you know, there is still an IEP, IDEA, federal law still is in effect. IEPs are still in effect. So if you are feeling any type of angst or pushback when it comes to your IEP, I really encourage you again to ask those questions and trust your gut. If you feel as though your child should be receiving something or shouldn't, or you're not sure, unclear, really ask those questions. It is the law that you as a parent have the right to meaningfully participate in your child's education. And I say that and because sometimes when I teach my class, I tell parents, here's something to remember verbatim. Here's one of those things. You have the right, and the IEP team should give you the opportunity to meaningfully participate in your child's education. So if there's pushback, then you let the team know, hey, I'm not getting answers to my questions, or this IEP hasn't happened, or this goal is appropriate, and you're not hearing my concern here. And as a result, I'm not getting the opportunity to meaningfully participate in my child's education. So I want to see what we can do to help to remedy that um, as as much as possible because I want to work collaboratively with the team. But if not, then I will need to exercise my parent rights. And I encourage parents to hold teams accountable. And so as we're transitioning back to school, it could be that your child might need more time, more in sensory. Their sensory needs might be more heightened. They may need more time for breaks. They might need more time to work with the special education teacher. Being able to have that built in is very valuable. It could be that their related services, may need to be adjusted, their speech, OT, PT, all those things. There may need to be some adjustments there. Talk with your team about that. Some parents, I talked with the mom yesterday, and she's saying that she wants her child to access the special education teacher and all the related services in the morning in lieu of being in a classroom on Zoom, because that's what a lot of schools are saying when they go in person. In order to support the kids who are at home on Zoom, the teacher is going to be teaching to Zoom while kids are in a classroom on the computer on Zoom. So what is that going to look like? Is that going to be a good fit for your child? Is your child going to be able to engage that way? If not, that could be an opportunity where they're actually out going getting their speech and OT or working with a special ed teacher, and then they come back to the classroom in the afternoon and actually work one-on-one with the teacher. That's an option. And I always encourage parents to think outside the box, and you bring these ideas of things that work for your child or that you're considering for your child, bring them to the attention of the team. Because one thing I teach parents is that teams, for the most part, have your child's best interest in mind, but they are overworked, they're overwhelmed. The amount of children who are identified with autism and special needs has increased exponentially over the past years. And as a result, with the services having stayed the same, teams just aren't able to provide quality support and follow IEPs like they're supposed to. And so you may need to be that person on the team that says, hey, have we considered this? Hey, here's some options that I think could work for my child. Can we try this? You may need to be that person because they're so overwhelmed. They're not thinking as creatively and they don't know your child as well as you do. So I encourage you to bring the ideas of what you think might work well for your child, especially as they're transitioning back on campus. Bring it to the attention of your team, and see if you can get some of those things implemented. Because I really do encourage parents to trust. You know your child best. Um, Not to give all of your. This is another thing for our families of color. Sometimes we give all of the onus and responsibility and all of the thoughts around our child's education to the experts because they know best. I have said at way too many IEPs where parents have said, well, if you guys think so, because you guys know best. And that's not so. And that's what I teach parents. You know your child best. Teams have experience and they have expertise in whatever area they've gone to school in. They have worked with many children, but no one knows your child better than you do. And so I encourage you to be thoughtful, be thinking, question things. They're not going to take it personally. And if they do, then that's too bad. Because honestly, what needs to happen is that your child receives the free and appropriate education that they deserve in the least restrictive environment. That is what the law says. And whatever it takes to get that is whatever it takes. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to share something else that I share with parents is that this is not a friendship relationship when it comes to IEPs as well and special education. It is a business relationship. Think about your plumber. Think about the person that comes to your house or your apartment or whatever and works on things. They're not your friend. You're cordial with them. You're pleasant, but you understand it's a business transaction. And that is what special education is. It's a business. Okay. And so I encourage parents to treat it that way, to treat these professionals as team members, not that they're the leader and you're just the person sitting there. No, they're equal people on the team. And there's a contract that gets signed every year, just like you sign a contract with somebody coming to do work in your house. You're signing a contract every year. That's called the IEP. And you would hold that person accountable who came to your house to do some work. We're going to hold teams accountable as well. And so if we can look at look at the IEP and look at special education through that lens, it's empowering, and I think it will really help to change the way you and we as parents can navigate and see progress in our IEP for our children. Um, if are there questions I can answer, or I can continue to share other things, you guys just let me know.
My question, have you found that there are districts that have moved to providing in-home supports because it's not working in the virtual environment? Um, I'm just I'm just seeing that there's a lot of conflicting scheduling when it comes
Mhm.
to the support class, or um, there's a speech pathologist, but there's often a conflict. So I'm wondering, how have you seen families navigating that process? And then I have a kind of a follow-up to that one as well.
So that's a great question, right? Because, like you said, sometimes there's multiple things that are trying to happen. Everybody's trying to work with your kid here and there. Some kids aren't even doing well virtually, they just don't learn well that way. I know my daughter, for example, taking tests on Zoom has been a no-go. And so for her, started probably around December, she started going in on campus, for example, and she takes her tests in person and she doesn't do the tests on Zoom, for example. So there are options. There are options. And I always want to encourage parents to know that there are options. And so some smaller school districts have actually started contracting with ABA providers, people who have the authority and are licensed and allowed to go into families' homes. Some of them have started contracting and sending people in to address behavior and supports that way, especially for our kiddos who typically would have a one-on-one aid. So some smaller districts are doing that. In our larger districts, I have not seen that. So what parents can do is really prioritize and prioritize what really matters for your child, and you help to create and develop a schedule that works best. It could be that maybe you ask that your child goes in for their speech services, Or, I've heard in other districts that parents are saying, we're going to hold off on the related service. We're going to do Zoom. We're going to engage, in small breakout rooms with the one-on-one aid is another option. So for some of our kiddos, they can get extra help one-on-one with an aid that way. But I've heard some parents in other districts say, we're just not going to do speech on the computer. It's not working. We're going to hold that, and we're going to count and document, because that's so important, document how much service they are supposed to be getting. And when school resumes, we're requesting that those hours be provided in person. So you have some flexibility and you have some options depending on what works best for your child.
I think Mr. or Ms. Pettigrew, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I apologize. If you want to unmute and ask your question, I saw a hand raised, or type it in the chat, either way. There you go.
It was a mistake.
Okay.
Sorry.
Now you mentioned pretty early on that there's a way that parents can connect with you through the San Diego Regional Center to attend the annual conference. What is their first step? Service coordinator with that, or what are the steps that they take to actually meet with you to go to that conference?
So that's great. Thank you for asking. And so what I have done, because of, new parents are being identified every month, I actually offer the conference monthly. It's typically on the first Saturday of the month for 4 hours. And so the first step in that would be to contact their service coordinator, let them know that they are interested in using their conference funds to attend a conference. And the conference they want to attend is the Crystal Clear IEP conference with Sanford Autism Consulting. And they can use my vendor number, which is PY2076. So P as in Paul, Y as in Young, 2076. And so the service coordinator would reach out to us. Many of them are aware of the registration link, but if they're not, encourage your service coordinator to reach out, and they can identify if the parent is eligible to attend, and then they will send the parent the registration link to register and put in for the authorization for that. And so our next one is coming up on April 10th, and then we also have one May 1st, and I can't think of the date for June, but on my website, those dates are available. And you can even send that information. You could say, hey, I know that this conference is happening, and here are the dates, and send it to your service coordinator, just so you can keep them in the loop in case they're not aware of it. But I try to keep the service coordinators aware so that more and more parents can engage.
That's great. Hi, Crystal. I'm Kim. Sorry, I had to jump on late. I had a meeting before.
No worries.
We support some parents. And so your conference, I mean, that's exciting. I'm looking at Regina. There's a few moms that we support, and their children are with the regional center. And so I know they have that parent education vendor code. I think that's what you're talking about for the conference. So it would be nice to support one of our moms. I'm looking at Regina because she knows the mom I'm talking about, whose son has special ed services, who's been struggling because he's been at home and not necessarily getting the support he needs because he can't sit still and participate. And so we've been trying to support her to support him, because the school district hasn't really done their part in getting the supportive services. I'm sure you've seen it all over. It's just such it's a sad state that our kids are in, that are in special ed, that aren't. It's bad enough for the kids who aren't in special ed to have remote education, but now the kids who are in special ed who aren't getting the additional supports, it's really sad. And so we have a mom specifically that I'm talking about whose son is struggling. So it's nice to be able to refer her to your conference so we can kind of help support her, to help advocate for her son's needs. So that's exciting.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I definitely share, the information with her. We'd love to have her at the next conference. But one thing I want to say, and really what you said makes me think about that, is I really wanted to make sure I shared about the idea of compensatory education. And so in any case, even if we were on the comprehensive campus and it had not been COVID, if a child is ever denied access to their IEP, if they're ever denied FAPE, or if in this case there is an extended time of school closure, then potentially a child can be eligible for compensatory education services. But that comes with the idea of documentation on the side of the parents. So, like for this parent that you're talking about, with this child who hasn't received his services, hasn't been on Zoom. I know of a kid at the school that I was working at who hasn't done Zoom the entire time. I know this kid. He's a non-speaking kid. He's a kid who who runs. The mom works hard, and she's not available. And so this kid hasn't been on Zoom for a year. And in cases like this, I encourage parents, go back and document and keep your documentation, keep it going from now until the time the school starts. How much time did he get with speech, with OT? How many sessions did he miss? How many hours was he supposed to receive? Try to gather some information. How much time was he able to do work independently versus having to have an adult sit there and work with the child? All those things. Did your IEP meeting get missed? Did you reach out by email or phone and you heard nothing? Document those things, because if you can show that your child has experienced some significant learning loss, and you can look at the goals for a lot of our kids and see that they haven't met them. I saw teams writing, goals can't be addressed, goals can't be measured because of COVID. Well, that's a cop out. That's a cop out.
Right.
Yeah. So if you can show that there has been a significant learning loss or the gap has widened for your child, then potentially you can request compensatory education. And that can look like additional hours in person of services that were missed. It can look like tutoring that gets paid for by the school district to cover that. Depending on how significant the case is, it can look like what do you call it? NPA, non-public
Non-public.
agencies. Yeah, non-public, depending on the loss and and so having parents document is so important, and I've told parents, let the kid turn the camera off and stand on their head, whatever, teams need to see that, because if they don't see that the child's struggling, and as parents, that hurts our heart, we don't want the team to see our kid,
Right.
acting up per se, but they've got to see that, because that helps to build your kids. To show that this kid truly has needs that are not being served. So with this parent you're talking about, have her to do the best you can to document those things that were missed, and then either request an IEP meeting or in writing in some way say that, hey, my kid has experienced learning loss. We're requesting compensatory education to cover that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hi, Crystal.
Elizabeth.
My question actually goes right along with that compensatory education thing. As we all know, especially people on the spectrum, nonverbal, not getting what they need virtually. And I'm working with a family that we've gone through the regional center, the district, all kinds of stuff to get this young man the education that he needs. And my question is in regard to the regional center. Now, I know they're the funder of last resort.
Yes.
So if this family mom has a letter from the district refusing or denying the compensatory education, do you know, is that what she would take to the regional center in order to appeal to get the speech hours, or is it something like that disability rights would need to step in?
So that's one step. And looking at regional center, often they're going to say, if the school denies it, then why don't you try to go with your your insurance, right? And see if they'll give your child some speech or stories like that. And then if the insurance denies it, then regional center would be maybe the last resort in that case. However, and that's a good question that you brought up, and an idea regarding if a district refuses, because we're saying, telling parents in writing request that comp ed, if you've really seen your child struggle significantly, if they say no, we need to ask them to document that in writing that they are denying that request. And that can look like what's called a PWN, a prior written notice. So that's a document that schools need to provide whenever they are agreeing to or they are refusing to make a change to eligibility, placement, or assessment. So if we're saying that our kid needs a change to assessment, if we're saying they need some kind of a change in maybe eligibility, maybe something else has come up new, if some significant change is occurring and the team is refusing, they need to document that in writing and give that to you. And that's super important because that is what you're going to need that will help to build your case when it comes to the next steps in how to address this issue using your rights. You have the right to file a complaint, which there's a 60-day turnaround in filing a complaint with the California Board of Education. And then you, or you can move all the way on to mediation and due process. And there, I know of several attorneys who I can recommend who would be helpful in that area. And if your case is, and you're found to be right, and the school is found to be negligent, then potentially the attorney fees can be covered through the lawsuit, but through the due process complaint. And so then parents aren't having to pay out of pocket for that in that case. And then potentially 9 out of 10 times, schools will just quote unquote settle out of court and they're going to grant you what you're requesting in the due process if it needs to go that far. But we try to start at the IEP table, try to negotiate it there. And then if it doesn't work, then we move forward in that way.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
I think my last question is, do you see a lot of folks that are coming to you to get guidance on facilitated IEPs, and do you do those? And can you share what that is for people who don't know? But yes, do you do those, and have you seen that a lot with your families you support?
So families that are looking for someone to come in, help support them, help them understand, sit in the meeting with them, is that the kind of work that you're referring to?
Or actually just someone who is unassociated with the district, who can just facilitate the IEP meeting. Just it's not the district or anyone from the family, the parent.
Mm-hmm.
Is just like a separate entity that does that and runs the meeting, just so we can come to an agreement on services.
Mm-hmm. So there's two things I can speak to with that. My work with families as an advocate, I do serve as that unbiased third party, right? I'm looking at the IEP and I go through with a fine tooth comb and I'm looking at the things that could be changed, maybe errors, things that have been missed. And then I sit in the meeting with the parents, and what I do is I create a document of bullet points that we share with the team that are our 10, 12, 15, 20 things that we want to see addressed in this IEP meeting. And typically that gets used as the agenda in the meeting. And that way we're using and maximizing our time when you have that, hour or 90 minutes, 2 hours together, so that the specific things that need to be addressed are addressed. And so that's work that I've been doing with families. And I want to say that has definitely increased since about September of last year until now, because I think as parents, we wanted to give the districts the benefit of the doubt. So, pandemic, March 2020, we all were just trying to figuring it out. We just kind of went with what was being offered. But by the time we got into the fall of last year, I think as parents, we were realizing that, hey, this isn't working, or certain things aren't working and we need help here. And so I've started seeing more and more parents reach out since then. Another option that parents have, depending on your school district, is that there are, in some districts, an ombudsperson or a person who, although they are employed by the district, their job is to be an unbiased party who attends the IEP meetings and helps both teams to come to a point of resolution. So there are in our larger districts. I know San Diego Unified does have an ombudsperson, a special education ombudsperson, who will sit in the IEP meeting along with the parents and the team. They are at the district level, so they don't have a specific tie to that school, and they try to bring resolution. You could attempt that. I get a little leery because they still are district employees, so they still may have some bias, but it is an option. But then a third option is the resolution meeting. So that is where someone that is not attached to the school district, and this would be if you've attempted the IEP at the IEP meeting table and still are in contention, you can request an informal resolution meeting. And then at that point, you would have a third party that would come in and try to help bring resolution to the challenges that you're having. And so that is another option that parents can address if they've tried everything at the IEP meeting table and that hasn't worked. So that's kind of an in-between step before moving on to filing a complaint at the state level or due process.
Hi, Crystal again. So I know you said you're a vendor through the regional center for your conference.
Yes.
Are you a vendor in terms of just educational consulting? So if a family needed your support, your services can be paid for through the San Diego Regional Center?
I wish that was an option. And
They used to have that service years ago. So
yes, and that's exactly what someone told me, that years ago
yes.
that there was funding for that. There currently is not funding for that, but it could be, and that's something I need to look into with self-determination.
Yes.
Right, that is beginning. Could it be that parents could use their funds for that?
They could.
Yeah, that's something that I
for
think
those that are in self-determination, and it's going to be opened up for families in June, but not,
right.
it's a slow program and it's not as readily usable, but okay, that would be interesting, because I definitely, the parent that I'm thinking of, she could I mean, we can support as much as we can. We support her to be living in her own apartment and support her raising her son. But we don't know about the school. Like, we know he's struggling, and we've been asked by the regional center to help her son. And it's like, that's not necessarily our expertise. Being able to call, hey, we have this person named Crystal who will be great to help support the mom, to make sure she's advocating, or maybe you could do some training for our staff or something. So you're definitely going to be a great resource for us.
As many families as I can help, I will be
absolutely
happy to do that. What I do offer for parents is I do offer payment plans. So I always tell parents, as long as we're good by the time we're done working together, which typically takes about 8 to 12 weeks, depending on the case, then that's fine. So if they're making small payments along the way, that's fine. And then I do offer some limited scholarships throughout the year as well. So that can be an option.
Okay, and it might be something in our case we may be able to just to support in-house, because I think in one particular case it's necessary for his development. He's young, but he's been out of just not getting anything for the whole year, and it's not okay.
Yeah, not at all.
Behaviorally, he can't just sit still. And I know the district has been. I heard of a potential lawsuit for San Diego Unified, but because they've neglected children in special ed, so it's a bigger issue than this. But any support we can give to the people that we support would be great.
Yes, definitely. One other thing that has come up, and I have a good friend and neighbor who's had this issue, is the mask compliance. So I don't know if this is an issue for any of other parents, but if you have a child who is non-compliant with the mask, some parents have been able to secure a medical exemption for the mask. Some districts are pushing back, and they're saying that, well, first of all, phase 1 of services that were being provided on campuses by appointment only were supposed to be for our most vulnerable population, our most vulnerable kids, our ELL kids, our kids with IEPs, our transient kids with housing. And unfortunately, those kids didn't always get the services, especially if they were not compliant with masks. And so that's a space to be requesting some support and some assistance, and potentially that compensatory education. But as they're coming back to campus, it could be that there's pushback about your child not wearing that mask. And so, and for this, in one case, the parent is being told that the child can't be in a room with other children if he can't wear the mask. So he'll have to be in another room or outdoors somewhere else when he's on campus. So they're allowing the kid to come back on campus, but they're not giving him access to his peers. And that's not okay either. There is information that's come down from the California Board of Education that has said that children cannot be denied FAPE. They can not be denied their free and appropriate education in the least restrictive environment if they have a medical exemption for the mask. And in this case, not being able to access an environment with his peers is not the least restrictive environment. How can you work on social goals? How can you work on these things if you don't have access to your peers? So I encourage parents to push back. The state has said it's a denial of FAPE, and there potentially is a case for compensatory education if teams tell you that your child can't be in the room if they don't wear the mask.
Crystal, I was actually gonna just kind of ghost and listen in because I had another call coming up, but I couldn't help but join in because I just finished one person-centered plan, which is through self-determination, and I'm working on the second one. And one of the things I noticed, I was really taken back when the IEP meeting was happening. And I'll just be very straightforward with it. I was sitting there, it was my first IEP meeting with this particular individual. And they just sat and read through like 8 pages of all of what they're doing. And, and then the individual, the young man was there with his mother, and his ABA therapist was there at their home. And so they're trying to work with him. It was totally not involving him. And one of the things that I noticed is that they were just kind of pushing down, even when the mother asked. So I do know that in self-determination, they're able to budget their monies, and that might be a great place because I know the need for your support would be great in those because the mother asked a question once, I remember. And so I'm texting her on the side saying, did that really answer your question? I didn't think it did, but, and then she texted me back and said, no, but she asked it again. But that's what I observed. And it's like, that's not helpful. They're rewriting the goals based on what works best for them, as opposed to what the mother wants. And what, she's with him, she's a stay-at-home mom. So, she's retired Navy. So she has all the time. So she's with him. She is the one that can tell you what he cannot voice and vocalize. So I think that is a great, great opportunity, if you would. That's almost begging, please get in there.
Right.
And
I'm so glad we had this conversation because that just almost just popped in my mind because I actually have a sister who is with the regional center, and it's because they service you throughout your life. Okay, my sister's 50 years old, still with the regional center. And my mom is being told that now she's going to have access to self-determination. So it's been in my mind, and I've been hearing about it, for my own child as well, kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. So they just dropped in my mind like, whoa, self-determination. I think maybe parents could access my services that way.
It's definitely. And we serve people. We have people that we support that are 80. So we serve adults. That's awesome that your sister will be able to get creative support.
Yes.
And self-determination is theoretically is awesome. It's just been slow to ramp up. There's lots of concerns or talks about across the state about how it's being rolled out and why it's taking so long. Even the pilot took forever, and not as many people participated, but it's starting to take traction, especially in June when it'll be opened up to anybody who wants it. And so the challenge, and I think Clyde is, since he's been working in a little bit more than anybody else, is getting to the budget issue, and they base it off of what your sister would have received prior year. So she's not getting any services or limited. They're only going to base her budget on what she's been receiving. So it could be in her best interest to do something if she's not receiving any services now. So because they're going to base it off of that. Of course, there's an appeal process, but they're going to, she may not get as much in the first year, but as her needs change, then she can have access to more.
Well, that's great to know. For my mom, I'll share that with her. And I
Yeah, and
consider
any meetings that come up, I mean, this might be worthwhile to share with you, so you can let your mom know. There might be some, there's some introductory meetings that are going on all the time, and so it might be a great time to get versed in it now if there's any trainings coming up.
that'd be great.
Yeah,
They had a meeting yesterday. I'll share that link with Melissa so she can send it to you.
Oh, perfect.
But that meeting yesterday was about how to get your budget approved through the regional center. I missed it, but I'm going to go back and watch that because that was one of the biggest challenges is I'm looking at a parent saying, well, these are the things that are really good. And they're saying, well, we don't really think he needs that right now. And it's like, well, how do you know?
Right.
You know, what gives, who has the right to make those decisions on what is really needed? So there's going to be some challenges with those particular issues, and it would be great. It's hard for us because if I were to like push too hard, then it's like, oh, are you trying to get them to come to your agency for service? Like, no, we
We
need
just
staff right now. So I mean, I'm going to be pushing to get like
we don't need we got enough clients. Yeah,
not
we
that
need staff.
we're not taking anyone,
Right.
but it's not like I wouldn't be pushing to do that. And I don't think many agencies would, because in this area, employment is very difficult, getting staff. So I think it would be great that there is a third party that's not an agency that understands and would be able to help push those real necessary items.
Yes, and I was at an IEP last week and a parent said, I really appreciate you being here because you asked those hard questions that we didn't feel comfortable asking or weren't sure about. And so I'm very happy to do that. And because what I do, I understand. I've written IEPs for 20 years. I've been on that side of the table. And I've also been a parent, now I have a 10-year-old. And so I understand where teams are coming from. I know how to present it in a way that they're going to receive it and not feel offended, but I'm also going to present it in a way that holds them accountable to the law.
That's
and so
awesome.
I can tie that together. Yeah. And typically we see a lot of progress. About 9 out of 10 of our cases, we get the things settled. We come with our list. I go through and I'm real succinct, 20 things, 10 things. And we get those things addressed in a way that the parents feel comfortable enough to sign. Because I always tell parents, never sign your IEP meeting at the day of the IEP meeting. Don't ever do that, because even if you feel good about it, just take it home. Just reread it one more time. Just, maybe show it to your coordinator, therapist, to people who, like you guys, wonderful, who are working with families. Let someone else's eyes look at that and settle in it. Don't ever make any decision with it. 24 hours, let it kind of melt and metal, think about it, and then sign and consent. Because once you've consented to that IEP, it is so much harder to make changes to it versus waiting and then signing. And there is no law that says you have to sign it immediately. You can take 2 months or 2 weeks or 2 days, and that's fine. But you just want to sign when you feel the most confident about that IEP document.
Well, we didn't mean to take over. We took over your presentation.
I'm going to go to my other meeting. So it was a pleasure to meet you.
I joined late and then we took over. Sorry.
No, I appreciate chatting with you guys. Thank you so much, and for all your information and help.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I have a quick question again for you, Crystal.
Yeah.
Have you noticed yet? We've been running across, like, let's say it's the mom, usually the mom, who, because of the pandemic, is not working.
Okay.
So the school is relying on that parent to sit with their child and do the work.
Yep.
Do the work with them. Have you been running across that? And it just makes that IEP meeting even harder.
Yes. So I have seen this a lot. Either it's the parent sitting there, or they have, there's a babysitter, nanny, somebody who's there. Some parents have paying out of pocket for somebody to sit there with them because they've got to Zoom for their own job. They can't sit there, whatever reason. And I have seen, unfortunately, teams rely way too heavily on that person, whomever that person may be, in lieu of doing their best and making their best attempt to provide the service that the child deserves. I've seen them say, well, parents, you're doing this and all I need you to do is, get trained in this or do this with them. And the parent's like, wait a minute, I'm the parent. It just so happens that I'm available to be here with my kiddo. But, and this is what I'm saying, if the parent was not available to do that, who would be doing that? It's the teen. If the parent wasn't, if the child was at school, the parent wouldn't be there, hand
Mhm.
holding and sitting there. So why are we depending on parents, leaning heavily? Yes, parents should be involved and be knowledgeable, but to depend heavily and lean on them to implement special education services, that's beyond the expectation for the parents right now.
Right. And
Um,
what happens when that parent can go back to work?
exactly. Exactly.
Then what are
Yes.
they going to do? So,
Right,
okay.
exactly. And so that's why they need to put things in place that can best support that child with the parent being aware of it, but not being the primary person to implement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
You just said something a few times within this webinar that I think is so important. Um, just so many things that were so important, but mainly, um, no one knows your child as well as you do.
Yes.
And just a short story, I noticed that in the virtual environment, the planner that the children all have to use means nothing. It
Mhm.
means nothing to my son.
Mhm.
Um, he's high functioning.
Mhm.
So I think there's a few layered reasons why they've kind of just left him out there, left it up to me. Um, and that's not FAPE. That's not the least
Yeah.
restrictive environment for him.
Mhm.
There were other things that transpired for I want to say the greater part of the 3 quarters, until I just had to say, hey, this we need to take another look at this, because this doesn't work for him.
Mhm.
We had to do something completely different. So I just decided to create a teen passion planner for him out of a notebook. And whereas we were, and I say we, whereas we were so many assignments behind and there was no support, I would be able to hear from and hear that he's only on with the speech
Yeah.
pathologist for maybe 5 minutes. And then I'm like, are you done already?
Right.
But this is the other thing that I'm hearing. This is another reason why it's so hard for children in the virtual environment who are high functioning, who should be in like an AVID or an honor society. They have that time taken up on their schedule, so they can't put those two things there. And
Mhm.
that's a problem, because we're
Mhm.
not, like you said earlier, also, we're not being creative in providing these supports and these services for these children who it's not one size fits all.
Yes.
I think so many things that you shared with us today are very important. I just want to read through kind of what I was writing and typing into the chat earlier. You said, number one, to trust your gut,
Mhm.
ask questions, reach out to the San Diego Regional Center for Analysis and Evaluation, and utilizing the social stories.
Mhm.
And I hope you all can still hear me okay. I had an alert come up. Utilize social stories to prepare for transitioning from the virtual environment if you are going back into the building. And then visualizations are helpful in easing the transition. That number 5, that was just something that I tried because I know my child and I know that he's going to need to see something. And this doesn't make sense to him anymore at the
Mhm.
kitchen table, this
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
So I just think those are very, very key. I so appreciate you being with us today. Can
It's
we do
been a
another
pleasure.
COVID clap?
Yeah. Oh, it's been such a pleasure. I'm always happy to share as much as I can with families because I'm there. I'm there with you. I'm dealing with it every day. We're talking off camera that I had to prep my kids to say, hey, mommy's going to be in a meeting. Don't come in. I'm living the same life with you guys. This virtual world, living, working, living in school, at home. And so as much as I can provide to families, I'm always honored to do that. And I hope people did take some takeaways and always feel free to reach out. You can always, I'm an email away. And answering some questions and providing some supports for families.
Absolutely. And then those of you all who are wanting to connect with Crystal, her Facebook and her website are in the chat as well. I linked those just a couple of times, but you can visit www.sdautismhelp.com. You can also follow her on Facebook, SD Autism Help on Facebook. And of course, we have shared a couple of posts and links to her page via our Facebook. And as usual, within 48 hours, we'll have any handouts. And of course, the replay of this webinar is going to be available on our YouTube, as well as our website. And you can get to that through abetterlifetogether.org/resources. I just, again, thank you. Thank you to everyone who's on with us today. And we will see you all next Wednesday at 10 a.m.
Thank you again.